What's up, everybody? Nick Dwyer back for the 10th inning, giving you another episode of This Day in Sports History. In yesterday's episode, we saw LeBron James back with the Cleveland Cavaliers bring Cleveland their first NBA championship, along with the help of Kyrie Irving, obviously. But LeBron fulfilled his promise, giving Cleveland a ring finally. We may not have any moments that are as exciting as that, especially for the city of Cleveland, but we do have a lot of important events to get into. So if y'all enjoy what you see, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. This Day in Sports History. We start out today in 1896 at the U.S. National Championships for tennis. On the women's side, Elizabeth Moore defeated defending champion Juliet Atkinson 6-4, 4-6, 6-2, 6-2 in 4 sets. This would be the first of 2 U.S. Open victories for Moore and the first of 2 majors in Moore's career. Now we go to golf in 1910 at the U.S. Open. Alex Smith, with a score of 6 over, wins in an 18-hole playoff over John McDermott and his younger brother, McDonald Smith, to win his second Open championship and the second and final major of his career. We go right back to the U.S. National Championships in 1919. On the women's side, Hazel Hotchkiss Whiteman defeated Marion Zinderstein 6-1, 6-2 in straight sets for her 4th U.S. singles title and the final major of her career. Now we move to Major League Baseball in 1921, and I want to kind of retract something that I did say the other day. I said on June 10th, Babe Ruth passed Gabby Kravitz to get the all-time home run lead when he hit his 120th home run. That was not true. That did give him the all-time home run lead in the 20th century, but there were players who did have more who played in the 19th century. So, in 1921, Babe Ruth would hit his 127th home run off of Elmer Myers in the top of the 10th inning to give the Yankees a 7-6 lead, which they would end up winning 7-6, pushing Ruth into second place all-time, passing Sam Thompson. Now we go back to the British Open, back to golf in 1930. Bobby Jones, with a score of 3 over, wins his 3rd Open title and his 11th of 13 majors. Jones ended up winning 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Leo Diegel and McDonald Smith on his way to the single-season Grand Slam in golf, which would be the first time anyone had ever done it, and no one else has done a single year Grand Slam in golf since. Now we go to track and field, where we have one of the greatest athletes of all time, Jesse Owens, set a 100-meter world record at 10.2 seconds. This world record would end up being broken less than 3 months later, but it's Jesse Owens. He had to find his way on here somehow. 4 years later, we move to boxing in 1940, and we see Joe Louis going up against Arturo Godoy. Louis ended up winning via technical knockout against Godoy in the 8th round for his 11th title defense. Now we move up 9 years to 1949 at Wimbledon, and we have, I'll say, one of the most controversial appearances at Wimbledon of all time. Gussie Moran shocked the Wimbledon crowd by wearing a short dress to, quote, look good and move more freely on the court, end quote. Moran would end up losing in the first round. As you'll see in the pictures, this was not something that most women were wearing at the time. Again, she wore it to feel more comfortable, to move around more comfortably, which I can't blame her. I couldn't imagine playing in a full dress. I couldn't imagine playing in a full suit, going to the guy's perspective, so I can completely understand what she's coming from. She wanted to feel more comfortable. However, she did get a lot of pushback from this. And when she came out later for her doubles matchup, she was wearing something not quite as short, but still not the typical dress that you would see. Now we go back to the LPGA Western Open in 1953, which saw Louise Suggs defeat runner-up Patty Bird 6-5 in the final for her 3rd of 4 Western titles. 7 years later in 1960, back to boxing, Floyd Patterson knocked out the champion Ingemar Johansson in Johansson's first title defense in 5 rounds to gain the heavyweight boxing title. This would be the second of 3 meetings between the two, and this would be Patterson's second victory. He would end up winning all 3 bouts. 4 years later in 1964 at the US Open, Ken Venturi, with a score of 2 under, wins his only major title, 4 strokes ahead of runner-up Tommy Jacobs. Now we stick with the US Open in 1966, Billy Casper, with a score of 2 under, erases a 7-stroke deficit on the final 9 holes to tie Arnold Palmer. These two would end up going into a playoff, and Casper would end up defeating Palmer by 4 strokes in the playoff to win his second of 3 overall majors. Now we have a world record in 1968. Some claim it was the first run under 10 seconds, but I will dispute that a little bit here. In 68, Jim Hines became the first person to run 100 meters in under 10 seconds. He was clocked at 9.9 by the manual timer, but by the electric timer, 10.03 seconds. Either way, it's still a world record. If you want to claim it's 9.9, great. If you want to claim 10.03, great. He still got the world record. It ended up being broken later in the year though, by himself, where he did officially run under 10 seconds. Now we go back to the US Open in 1976, and rookie Jerry Pate, with a score of 3 under, won his only major title, 2 strokes ahead of runners-up Al Gieberger and Tom Weiskopf. At the same time that was happening, at the UEFA European Championship final, Czechoslovakia upset West Germany after a 2-2 draw in the game. Czechoslovakia won 5-3 on the penalties. For Czechoslovakia, the scoring started early, scoring in the 8th minute and the 25th minute, going up 2-0 early. West Germany came right back though, cutting the score in half, when Mueller would end up scoring in the 28th minute. Then the game seemed like it was in Czech's favor, all the way until the 89th minute, when West Germany scored once again, tying the game 2-2. The game would end up going to penalty shots. Czechoslovakia scored all 5 of theirs. West Germany missed their 4th shot, giving Czechoslovakia the victory and the UEFA European Championship final. 4 years later in 1980, back to boxing, Roberto Duran took the WBC welterweight title from Sugar Ray Leonard by unanimous decision. This would be the first of the 3 meetings between these two. This would be Duran's only victory within these 3 meetings. 2 years later in 1982, Tom Watson ended up winning the US Open, 2 strokes ahead of Jack Nicklaus. This would be Watson's only US Open victory and the 7th of 8 major victories. 1 year later in 1983, we stick with the US Open. Larry Nelson, with a score of 4 under, wins 1 stroke ahead of defending champion Tom Watson in a storm-affected finish. This would be Nelson's only US victory and the second of 3 majors in his career. 2 years later in 1985, in Major League Baseball, Reggie Jackson hit his 513th career home run off of Don Schultz in the top of the second for a 2-run home run, moving him into 10th place on the all-time home run list, passing Ernie Banks and Eddie Matthews. Now we move to the first Rugby World Cup final in 1987, which saw the New Zealand All Blacks going up against France. For the All Blacks, Grant Fox landed 4 penalties, a conversion, and a drop goal as they would defeat France 29-9. This would be the first of 3 World Cup victories for New Zealand. Now we go right back to the US Open in 1988, and Curtis Strange, with a score of 6 under, wins in an 18-hole playoff, 4 strokes ahead of runner-up Nick Faldo. This would be the first of back-to-back US Open victories for Strange and 2 majors in his career. Now we stick with the back-to-back mantra, go to 1993 at the NBA Finals. The Chicago Bulls defeated the Phoenix Suns 4-2. In the series, Michael Jordan averaged a ridiculous 41 points, 8.5 rebounds, while Scottie Pippen added 21 points and 9.2 boards. BJ Armstrong also had 11.6 points, with Horace Grant 11.2 points for the Bulls. For the Suns, Charles Barkley led the charge, 27.3 points, 13 boards, Kevin Johnson 17.2 points, and Don Marley 17.2 points. The Game 6 victory for the Bulls was 99-98, with Michael Jordan scoring 33 points, Scottie Pippen 23 points, and the hero of the game, John Paxson. Paxson ended up hitting the game-winning 3 with only 3.9 seconds remaining on the clock, something the Suns would not come back from, and the Bulls would get their second championship in their franchise. Now we stick in 1993 at the US Open. Lee Janzen, with a score of 8 under, played sub-70 golf in all 4 rounds to tie the tournament scoring record and win the first of 2 US Open titles and 2 majors. Janzen would end up defeating runner-up Payne Stewart by 2 strokes. 1 year later in 1994, we stick with the US Open, and Ernie Els, with a score of 5 under, wins on the second sudden death hole to defeat Lauren Roberts after Colin Montgomery was eliminated in an 18-hole playoff. This would be the first of 4 majors in Elz's career. Now we go to 1998, and we have part of the summer of home runs here. Sammy Sosa would end up hitting his 15th and 16th home run in the month of June after 2 consecutive 2-home run games. The first home run of the day came off of Matt Beach, which ended up tying the record for the most home runs in June with 15. Then the second came off Toby Borland, giving him 16 in the month of June for the most of all time in June. He would end up hitting 20 in the month, the most of all time in any month. 1 year later, we go back to the US Open in 1999. Payne Stewart, with a score of 1 under, wins his second Open title, 1 stroke ahead of runner-up Phil Mickelson. 2 years later in 2001, we're right back to the MLB, right back to the long ball, if that's your sort of thing. Barry Bonds hits his 38th home run of the year before the All-Star break, off of Rodney Myers, which would pass Reggie Jackson and Mark McGwire for most home runs hit before the All-Star break. 3 years later, we stick with MLB, stick with home runs. On Father's Day, with his dad in attendance, Ken Griffey Jr. hit a 6th inning home run off of Matt Morris over the right field fence for his 500th career home run. The Reds center fielder at the time would become the 20th major leaguer and the 6th youngest to ever reach the milestone of 500 home runs. Staying in 2004 at the US Open, Retief Goosen, with a score of 4 under, wins his second Open title, 2 strokes ahead of runner-up and reigning Masters champion Phil Mickelson. 2 years later in 2006, we go back to the NBA Finals, which saw the Miami Heat going up against the Dallas Mavericks. The Heat ended up winning this series 4-2, with Dwyane Wade averaging 34.7 points, Antoine Walker averaging 13.8, and Shaquille O'Neal 13.7 points for the Heat. For the Mavericks, Dirk Nowitzki 22.8 points, Jason Terry 22 points. But in the Game 6 victory 95-92, Dwyane Wade had 36 points, giving the Miami Heat the NBA Finals, giving Dwyane Wade his first Finals. Now we go back to home runs in 2007, and Sammy Sosa became the 5th major leaguer to hit 600 career home runs after hitting a 5th inning home run off of Jason Marquis. Sosa would add his name to the likes of players of Willie Mays, Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, and Hank Aaron when he hit his 600th home run. Now we go back to golf in the US Open 2010. Graham McDowell, who played an even par over the 4 rounds, won his first title, 1 stroke ahead of runner-up Gregory Havret. Now we go back to the NBA Finals in 2013, and the Miami Heat once again won the NBA Finals, this time defeating the San Antonio Spurs 4-3. For the Heat, LeBron James would win MVP for the 2nd straight year, averaging 25.3 points in the series. Dwyane Wade averaged 19.6 for the Heat. For the Spurs, Tim Duncan 18.9, Tony Parker 15.7, Kawhi Leonard 14.6. In the 95-88 Game 7 victory for the Heat, LeBron James scored 37 points, Dwyane Wade with 23, Shane Battier 18 points off the bench to give them back-to-back final wins. Now we go back to Major League Baseball in 2015, but it's the complete opposite of hitting the long ball. In the Washington Nationals Pittsburgh Pirates game, Max Scherzer was 1 pitch away from a perfect game when it was spoiled when he would end up hitting Jose Tabata with a pitch. This pitch ended up hitting Tabata in the elbow that many believed he purposely leaned into to get on base. Whether it was intentional, whether it wasn't, Scherzer would ended up getting the next batter out to complete his first no-hitter, and this came after a start where he had a 16 strikeout, 1-hit appearance against Milwaukee. In the game against Pittsburgh, 9 innings pitched, 10 strikeouts. So over the last 2 games for Scherzer, it was 18 innings pitched, 1 hit allowed, 26 strikeouts. We end today's video off in 2016 at the World Cup. Cristiano Ronaldo of Portugal scores a header against Morocco to become the all-time leading goal scorer in European international play with 85 goals. So there you have it. That's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left anything out, let me know down in the comment section. If I mispronounced any names, I do apologize. For Nico Dwyer and the 10th inning, stay safe out there. See you tomorrow.